Generations of Western Christians have been puzzled by the Ascension, because we have lived in an implicit cosmology in which heaven is thought of as a long way upstairs in the sky. That's reflected in hymns which speak of beyond the blue and so on. It's also reflected in stained glass windows which have Jesus going up with only his feet sticking downwards out of a cloud. But then with the rise of modern science, people have realized that heaven cannot be a location within our space-time universe, somewhere you might eventually get to if Elon Musk or Richard Branson flew you far enough. So what is the Ascension about? Does it commit us to a kind of Jesus the spaceman viewpoint, which we today know to be deeply misleading? No. The problem is with our implicit metaphysics and cosmology. Modern secularism has actually assumed that because there isn't such a place as heaven within our cosmos, it can't exist. Many Christians in response have lurched towards the philosopher Plato and have said, but we have these things called souls, and the soul's true home is in heaven, which is a spiritual place, not material at all. But then we have the Ascension, which is precisely about Jesus' physical body, his resurrected body, yes, but still recognizable by the mark of the nails, still able to walk and talk and, as in verse 4, to sit at table and eat with his friends. The Ascension is about this physical body now being in heaven. This makes no sense in modern secular cosmology, but in the genuinely biblical cosmology, it makes all the sense in the world. The difference between them has nothing to do with the biblical cosmology being ancient and the secular cosmology being modern. Secular modernism is simply, in fact, a new variation on ancient Epicureanism, in which the gods lived in a totally different sphere from the humans. Most people in our culture, including most Christians, don't realize that there are different cosmologies, different ways of understanding how everything fits together or not. And so people unthinkingly accept the modernist one. And most Christians then add in a dash of Platonism, claiming that even if we and God are a long way apart, our souls can jump the gap and will eventually end up leaving Earth and going to heaven. That is an unbiblical distortion. In Scripture from Genesis 1 onwards, heaven and earth are the twin halves of God's good creation. They are designed to interlock and overlap. They are made for one another. Scripture affirms repeatedly that they are designed eventually to come together as one. Heaven is God's space, earth is our space, but that isn't to suggest that heaven is a Platonic heaven, in which space, time and matter have no place. Far from it. To do cosmology as with everything else, don't start with other views of how things work and then try to fit Jesus into those other views. Put Jesus at the center and rethink everything around him. With the Ascension, you see, the human body of Jesus is gloriously at home in his Father's territory, against the day when he will come again to bring everything to judgment and to the long-awaited universal restoration, which Peter speaks about a couple of chapters later, Acts chapter 3, verse 21. It's interesting that both Paul and John, when speaking of that moment, refer not simply to Jesus coming, as though he's coming from some distance away, but to Jesus appearing. Interestingly, this is the language used by Paul in Colossians 2 and by John in 1 John 3. Heaven and earth, it seems, are already secretly intertwined, with the heavenly reality, focused on Jesus himself, very close but hidden as it were behind a curtain, ready to be unveiled, revealed. The Ascension isn't about Jesus going away and leaving us to our own devices. It's about Jesus now at the Father's right hand, in other words, holding the place of authority and power in the whole cosmos, In the Bible, heaven is the CEO's office. It's the place from which things are run. And God made the world in such a way, as in Genesis 1, that it would work properly when God's sovereign authority was put into operation through obedient humanity. That's what Psalm 8 is about. And Psalm 8 was very important in early Christian thinking about our destiny and calling, but more specifically about Jesus himself. Jesus is now enthroned in the place of authority which was marked out for the human one from the very beginning.